A black rancher lived alone for years until a widowed CEO came and said, "We are classmates, if you remember." Silas Morgan was mending a fence on the far edge of his Montana ranch when he saw the black SUV making its way down his long dirt driveway. Visitors were rare. His ranch was 40 miles from the nearest town, and most people knew he preferred his solitude. In the 15 years since he'd bought this land, he could count on one hand the number of unexpected guests. He watched the vehicle approach, his shepherd dog Atticus alert at his side. The SUV was expensive, out of place among the rugged landscape of his working cattle ranch. When it finally stopped near his house, a blonde woman in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater stepped out, looking around like she'd landed on another planet. Silas approached slowly, wiping his hands on his worn jeans. The woman was beautiful in that polished, expensive way. Perfectly styled hair, flawless makeup, everything about her screaming wealth and sophistication. She looked familiar, but he couldn't quite place her. "Can I help you?" His voice was cautious. "You lost?" The woman turned, and when their eyes met, recognition flashed across her face. "Silas? Silas Morgan?" He studied her more carefully. Those green eyes, that smile. And then it clicked. "That Bryn? Bryn Holloway?" "Bryn Castellano now." "Well, Holloway again, actually. I went back to my maiden name after..." She stopped herself. "It's been a long time. 20 years. Since high school." Silas couldn't believe what he was seeing. Bryn Holloway, the girl who'd sat next to him in AP Literature senior year, who'd been his lab partner in chemistry, who'd been one of the few people in their predominantly white Montana high school who treated him like a regular human being instead of a curiosity or a threat. "We are classmates, if you remember," Bryn said softly, echoing words she'd said to him 2 decades ago when he'd been hesitant to partner with her for a project, worried about the social consequences for her. "I remember." Silas gestured toward his house, a modest 2-story structure he'd built himself. "What brings you all the way out here? This isn't exactly on the way to anywhere. I came specifically to see you. Can we talk? I promise it's important." Inside the house, Silas made coffee, while Bryn looked around his home with obvious curiosity. The interior was simple but well-maintained. Hardwood floors he'd installed himself, furniture that was functional rather than decorative, and walls covered with photographs of the ranch, the land, the cattle. "You built a good life here," Bryn observed. "It's peaceful. That's the goal. Peace and quiet." Silas handed her a mug. "Now, what's this about? You didn't drive 40 miles into the middle of nowhere just to catch up on old times." "Actually, I did. Sort of." Bryn wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "Silas, do you remember, in high school, I used to talk about my father's company, Castellano Technologies, the software company. You said you were going to take it over someday." "I did. 10 years ago when my father retired. I've been CEO ever since, and the company's grown exponentially. We have offices in 12 countries now, over 5,000 employees. It's been consuming." "Congratulations, but I still don't see what that has to do with me. 3 years ago, my husband Dominic died. Car accident. Sudden, senseless, and it broke something in me. I threw myself into work, expanded the company even more, worked 18-hour days to avoid dealing with the grief. And last month, I woke up in my office at 3 a.m., realized I hadn't been home in 4 days, and had a panic attack that landed me in the hospital." Silas felt unexpected sympathy. "I'm sorry. About your husband, about all of it. Thank you. The doctor said I was burned out, that I needed to step away from the company for a while or I'd end up with a heart attack before I turned 45. My assistant Portia suggested I find somewhere quiet to decompress, and I remembered you. Me. You used to talk about wanting to own a ranch someday, about finding a place far from people and their judgments, where you could just work the land and be at peace. I wondered if you'd actually done it, so I looked you up, and here you are, living exactly the life you described. And you want what? To visit? To hide out from your responsibilities? I want to learn how you did it, how you found peace, how you built something meaningful that doesn't consume you." Bryn set down her coffee mug, her expression vulnerable. "Silas, I'm drowning. I need to remember how to breathe. And you're the only person I could think of who might understand. We barely knew each other in high school, but we were friends. Good friends, even if circumstances made that complicated. You were one of the only people who saw me. Eat my father's money or my last name, just me. And I tried to do the same for you, to see past the racism and stereotypes everyone else projected onto you. Silas remembered. Bryn had been one of the few bright spots in his high school experience, while other students either feared him or fetishized him. While teachers assumed he was less intelligent or more dangerous, Bryn had treated him like a person. They'd studied together, laughed together, and for a brief moment, he'd even thought they might become something more than friends. Then graduation had come. Bryn had gone to Stanford, he'd joined the Marines, and their lives had diverged completely. I'm not a therapist or a life coach, Bryn. I'm a rancher. I wake up at 5 a.m., work until dark, and fall asleep exhausted. That's not wisdom, that's just routine. That's exactly what I need. Routine, purpose, something real instead of boardrooms, balance sheets. Bryn leaned forward. Let me stay, just for a few weeks. I'll help with the ranch work. I'll stay out of your way. I need this, Silas. Please. He should have said no. Should have sent her back to her wealthy life and her company and her problems that had nothing to do with him. But something in her eyes, desperation mixed with determination, reminded him of the girl he'd known in high school, the girl who'd defended him when classmates made racist comments, who'd insisted on being his lab partner despite social consequences. 2 weeks, Silas said finally. You can stay in the guest room. But Bryn, ranch work is hard, physical, dirty, exhausting. If you can't handle it, I'll handle it, I promise. Bryn's first week at the ranch was a disaster. She couldn't wake up at 5 a.m., had no idea how to handle cattle, and ruined 3 pairs of expensive jeans before Silas took her to town to buy actual work clothes. This is humiliating, Bryn muttered as they drove his beat-up truck to the local feed and supply store. I run a multi-billion-dollar company, and I can't even muck out a stable properly. Different skill sets. Running a company doesn't prepare you for physical labor. At the store, they ran into Silas's friend and fellow rancher, Thatcher Cole, who looked Bryn up and down with obvious curiosity. Who's this Silas? Finally got yourself a girlfriend. Old classmate from high school. She's staying at the ranch for a couple of weeks. Classmate. Thatcher's eyebrows rose. He was white, in his 50s, and had known Silas long enough to understand the implications. From Montana? Thought you said that high school wasn't exactly welcoming to black students. It wasn't. Bryn was one of the exceptions. Later, while Silas was loading feed bags into the truck, Bryn approached Thatcher. You look skeptical. I'm protective. Silas is a good man, and he's been alone out here by choice for a long time. I'm just wondering what you want from it. Nothing but space to figure out my life. He's being incredibly generous letting me stay. Make sure that's all it is. Because if you're here to disrupt his peace or use him for some rich person's whim, I'm not. I promise. But Thatcher's warning stuck with Bryn. She was disrupting Silas's peace, whether she intended to or not. He'd built a solitary life, and here she was, invading it with her problems and her presence. That evening, she found him on the porch watching the sunset. I'm making things harder for you. I should leave. You're making things different. It's not the same as harder. Silas gestured to the empty chair beside him. Sit. Tell me what you're running from. What makes you think I'm running? Bryn, you're a CEO. You could have gone to a spa, hired a therapist, taken a vacation anywhere in the world. Instead, you came to a ranch in the middle of nowhere to stay with someone you barely knew 20 years ago. That's running. She sat, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders against the evening chill. You're right. I'm running from grief, from guilt, from the fact that I'm not sure who I am without my work. Dominic died 3 years ago, and I haven't processed it. I've just worked harder, faster, trying to outrun the pain, and it's not working anymore. Grief doesn't have a timeline. You process it when you're ready. Were you running when you came here? To Montana? To this ranch? Yeah. From racism. From always having to prove myself. From being seen as a threat instead of a person. After the Marines, I had skills and discipline and GI Bill money. I could have gone anywhere, done anything. But I was tired, Bryn. Tired of fighting to be seen as human. Out here, there's no one to judge me except the cattle, and they don't care what color I am. Doesn't it get lonely? Sometimes. But lonely is better than constantly defending your existence. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. And Bryn realized she felt more at peace in this moment than she had in 3 years of frantic work and avoidance. Hello, my Stop Racism family. Thank you for tuning in today. Before we dive deeper into this beautiful love story, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your country and state in the comments below. Also, I'd love to know your thoughts. What did you think of the story so far? Do you believe love can truly conquer prejudice? Let us know in the comments. We love reading them. And trust me, your words motivate us to keep making these videos. Let's make this video reach at least 50 comments. Your support means the world to us, and it drives us to create even more meaningful content for you. So don't forget to comment, share, and keep spreading love. By the second week, Bryn had developed calluses and could actually be useful around the ranch. She learned to feed the cattle, helped Silas repair fences, and even assisted with vaccinating the calves. The physical work was exhausting but satisfying in ways her corporate job had never been. I forgot what it felt like to be tired from actual labor instead of stress, Bryn said one evening as they cleaned up after dinner. Silas had insisted on teaching her to cook simple ranch meals. Nothing fancy, but filling and nutritious is the difference. One makes you sleep well, the other keeps you up all night. Can I ask you something about high school? Sure. Why were you always alone? I mean, you were smart, talented, good at sports, but you never seemed to have many friends. Silas dried a plate slowly, considering his answer. You really want to know? I do, because being friends with me had social consequences. White students who were friendly with me got questioned by their parents, teased by their peers, sometimes worse. I learned early that it was easier to be alone than to put people in that position. I never cared what people thought. That's because you had privilege. Your father owned half the businesses in town. You could afford not to care. But Bryn, I noticed that you never invited me to hang out outside of school, never asked me to parties or to study at your house. We were friends at school, but not outside it. That told me everything I needed to know about the limits of our friendship. Bryn felt shame washed over her. You're right. I was a coward. I told myself I was being your friend, but I was only willing to do it within safe boundaries. Sorry, Silas. I should have been braver. You were 17. We were all figuring things out. Silas set down the dish towel. But Bryn, I need to ask, why are you really here? Is this guilt? Trying to make up for not being a better friend in high school? No. Maybe partly. But no. I'm here because I remembered you as someone who knew yourself, who wasn't performing for anyone. I needed to remember what that looked like. I'm not some wise hermit who's figured out all of life's secrets. I'm just a guy who wanted to be left alone. But you're at peace. That's what I need. To find peace with who I am. With what happened to Dominic? With all of it. They were standing close now, and Bryn was acutely aware of Silas in ways that had nothing to do with friendship or guilt. He'd grown into a handsome man, tall, strong, with kind eyes and a quiet confidence she found incredibly attractive. Bryn, Silas's voice was careful. I need you to be honest. Is there something else happening here? Because I'm feeling things I probably shouldn't, and I need to know if it's one-sided. It's not one-sided. But Silas, I'm a mess. I'm grieving. I'm burned out, barely holding. We were kids. This is different. You're right. We're adults now. Adults who can make our own choices without worrying about high school social politics. Bryn stepped back, creating distance. I can't. Not now. I'm not ready, and it wouldn't be fair to you. I need to figure out who I am without Dominic, without my work, before I can even think about this. Silas nodded, understanding but disappointed. Okay. But Bryn, when you do figure it out, if you figure it out, I'll be here. Word spread quickly in the small town of Riverside that Silas Morgan had a woman staying at his ranch. By the third week, when Bryn accompanied him to town for supplies, they were met with curious stares and whispered conversations. At the local diner, owned by a woman named Willa, they sat at the counter for lunch. Willa was friendly, but clearly curious. So, Silas, going to introduce me to your friend, Bryn Holloway. We went to high school together. Holloway, Any relation to Franklin Holloway, who used to own the lumber mill? His daughter, Bryn, confirmed. Well, welcome home. Though I heard you're some big CEO now, living in Seattle or San Francisco or somewhere fancy. Seattle. I'm just visiting Silas for a few weeks. After they left, Silas apologized. Small towns are like this. Everyone knows everyone's business. It's fine. Actually, it's kind of nice. In Seattle, I'm anonymous, unless I'm in a boardroom. Here, people actually talk to each other. But not everyone was friendly. At the feed store, they encountered a man named Vaughn Pritchard, who'd been 2 years ahead of them in high school. Vaughn had been one of the students who'd made Silas's life difficult with racist comments and harassment. Well, Silas Morgan, heard you were living out here playing cowboy. Vaughn's eyes slid to Bryn. And Bryn Holloway. Didn't expect to see you slumming it with. Finish that sentence, and we're done here, Bryn said coldly. Silas owns one of the most successful cattle operations in the region. He's not playing anything. And whatever racist garbage you were about to say, keep it to yourself, Vaughn sneered. You always did have a thing for her. I said we're done. Bryn turned her back on him, taking Silas's arm. Let's go. This place suddenly smells bad. In the truck, Silas was quiet. Finally, he said, you didn't have to do that. Do what? Shut down a racist asshole? Yes, I did. Silas, I let too much slide in high school. I'm not letting anything slide now. People will talk about you being at my ranch, about us. Let them talk. I don't care. You should care. Small-town gossip can be vicious, especially about... He gestured between them. Situations like this. Like what? An interracial friendship. An interracial relationship. Silas, it's 2024. If people have a problem with that, it's their issue, not ours. It becomes our issue when they make it our problem. Bryn, I've dealt with racism my whole life. I've learned to pick my battles, to not react to every comment or stare. You charging and defending me, it's appreciated, but it also paints a target on both of us. So what? I should just stay silent when someone's being a bigot. I'm saying we need to be strategic. Getting into confrontations with every Vaughn Pritchard in town doesn't change their minds. It just makes our lives harder. Bryn was frustrated, but understood his point. I'm sorry. I'm used to having power and using it. But you're right. This is your community, your life. I shouldn't have charged in like that. I appreciate the intention. Just think before you act. That's all I'm asking. By the 4th week, Bryn's original plan to stay for 2 weeks had long been abandoned. She'd called her assistant Portia and arranged for an extended leave, putting her second-in-command Gideon in charge of the company temporarily. How long are you planning to stay? Portia asked during one of their check-in calls. I don't know. As long as Silas will let me. And Silas is complicated. He's an old friend, but he's becoming more than that. Or maybe he always was, and I was too scared to admit it in high school. Girl, are you falling for the rancher? Maybe. Probably. But Portia, I'm still grieving Dominic. I still have all this work stuff to sort out. The timing is terrible. Timing is always terrible. If you wait for the perfect moment, you'll wait forever. Silas's ranch hand, a grizzled man in his 60s named Boone, had similar observations. You're happier, he told Silas one morning while they worked on replacing a section of barn roof. Having her here, it's good for you. Or it's temporary. She has a whole life in Seattle, a company to run. This is just an escape for her. Is that what she says? She doesn't know what she wants. She's still figuring things out. And what do you want? Silas hammered a nail harder than necessary. Doesn't matter what I want. Our lives are too different. She's a CEO, I'm a rancher. She's white, I'm black. Her world and mine, and they don't mix. That's fear talking. The Silas I know doesn't let other people's opinions dictate his choices. I'm not worried about other people's opinions. I'm worried about her eventually realizing this was all a fantasy, that real life with me doesn't look like a vacation on a ranch. But as the days passed, Bryn showed no signs of wanting to leave. She learned to ride horses, helped Silas deliver a calf during a difficult birth, and even started taking online business courses about sustainable ranching and agricultural management. What are you doing? Silas asked one evening, finding her surrounded by books on cattle management and regenerative agriculture. Research. Your operation is good, but it could be more efficient, more sustainable. I've been reading about holistic management practices. Bryn, this isn't your company. You don't need to optimize my ranch. I'm not trying to take over. I'm just interested. And Silas, you could expand. With proper capital investment and strategic planning, you could triple your operation size while actually reducing environmental impact. I don't want to triple my operation. I want to run a manageable ranch that lets me live in peace. But don't you want to build something bigger? Something that could be a legacy? No. I want enough to live comfortably, to maintain the land responsibly, and to not be beholden to anyone. Bigger isn't always better. Bryn looked frustrated. I'm trying to help. I know. But I don't need help. I need... Silas stopped himself. What do you need? I need you to stop treating this like a project to fix. I'm not broken. My ranch isn't broken. And constantly trying to improve or optimize everything is exactly the mindset that burned you out in the first place. The words stung, but Bryn recognized their truth. You're right. I'm sorry. I fall back into CEO mode because it's familiar, even when it's not appropriate. I'll stop. I don't want you to stop being yourself. I just want you to be present, to experience this life, instead of constantly analyzing how to make it better. I don't know how to do that. I've spent 15 years optimizing, improving, strategizing. I don't know how to just be. Then let me teach you. Starting now, put away the books, turn off your phone, and come watch the sunset with me. No planning, no analyzing, just being. Bryn's extended stay inevitably attracted attention. Her mother Lorraine called, demanding to know what was happening. You've been gone for over a month. Gideon says you have no plans to return. Bryn, what are you doing? I'm taking time off, Mom, like the doctors ordered. On a ranch with a man I've never heard of? This isn't like you. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I need to not be like me for a while. Who is he? This Silas Morgan? An old classmate from high school. He's kind, patient, and he's helping me remember what it means to live, instead of just work. Classmate. Wait, is this the black boy you used to mention? The one your father didn't want you spending time with? Bryn's blood ran cold. Excuse me? Don't act surprised. You know your father had concerns about you associating with certain people. He wanted you focused on your future, not getting distracted by inappropriate friendships. Please tell me Dad didn't actively discourage my friendship with Silas. Lorraine was quiet for too long. He may have mentioned to some of your teachers that he preferred you be paired with other students for projects, for your own good. My own good? Mom, Dad sabotaged my friendships because of racism? It wasn't racism. It was concern for your reputation, your future. It was absolutely racism, and I can't believe you're defending it. Bryn felt sick. No wonder Silas pulled away senior year. No wonder things got awkward. It wasn't just social pressure. It was active interference from my father. After hanging up, Bryn found Silas in the barn. I need to tell you something about high school. She explained her mother's revelation, how her father had worked behind the scenes to discourage their friendship. Silas listened without expression. I'm not surprised, he said finally. You knew. Not specifically, but I knew something happened. Senior year, suddenly we weren't in any classes together. You got assigned different lab partners. I figured it was coincidence. He shrugged. Now it makes sense. I'm so sorry. If I'd known, you were 17 and under your father's control. There wasn't much you could have done. I could have fought harder. I could have questioned why things changed. Instead, I just let you drift away. I'm sorry, Silas. So sorry. Ancient history. We can't change it, but it matters. It explains so much. Why you've been hesitant about us. Why you question whether I'll actually stand by you when things get hard. I proved in high school that I wouldn't. I let my father's racism win. Bryn, you were a kid. I don't hold high school against you, but you should. I should be held accountable for failing you as a friend. What do you want from me? Anger? Forgiveness? I'm not interested in relitigating the past. What matters is now. Who you are now. What you choose now. And who am I now? A burned-out CEO hiding from her responsibilities. You're a woman trying to figure out who she wants to be. That takes courage, Bryn. Don't diminish it. 6 weeks into her stay, Bryn received an ultimatum from her board of directors. Return to Seattle and resume her duties as CEO, or step down permanently and let Gideon take over. Threatening you? Silas asked as Bryn read the email. Not threatening, just being realistic. The company needs consistent leadership. I can't stay here indefinitely and expect them to function without me. So, what are you gonna do? I don't know. The company is my life's work, my father's legacy. I can't just walk away from it. Can't or won't. What's the difference? One means you're trapped. The other means you're choosing your cage. Bryn looked around the ranch, at the mountains in the distance, the cattle grazing peacefully. The simple, honest life Silas had built. What if I stayed? What if I stepped down, let Gideon run the company, and built something here? You'd be bored within 6 months. Bryn, you love your work. You love the challenge, the strategy, the impact. Living on a ranch in the middle of nowhere wouldn't satisfy you long term. You don't know that. I know you. You've been here 6 weeks, and you've already tried to optimize my entire operation, researched new management techniques, and suggested 5 different expansion strategies. You're built for complexity and challenge. Rural Montana doesn't offer that. But I love it here. I love the peace, the simplicity. You love the escape. That's different from loving the life. Bryn knew he was right, and it broke her heart. So what? We just end this? Accept that our lives are too different? Or we figure out how to bridge the gap? I'm not asking you to give up your company, but I'm also not willing to give up my ranch to move to Seattle and be your trophy husband. I would never ask you to do that. Wouldn't you? Eventually. Bryn, interracial relationships come with extra challenges. Society has opinions. Families have reactions. Add in the class difference, a billionaire CEO and a rancher, and people will make assumptions about me using you for money, about you slumming it with, he stopped himself, with a black man. That's what you were going to say. Yeah, because that's what people will think. That you're rebelling or experimenting or going through a phase after your husband's death. I don't care what people think. You should, because their opinions affect both of us. They affect whether banks give me fair rates, whether business associates take you seriously, whether we can walk down the street without stares and comments. So we just give up? Let racism and classism win? I'm saying we need to be realistic about what we're walking into. Bryn returned to Seattle to meet with her board, but instead of submitting to their ultimatum, she proposed a restructuring. She'd remain CEO but work remotely half the time, with Gideon serving as COO, handling day-to-day operations. Remote work is standard now, Bryn argued. Technology allows me to be just as effective from Montana as from Seattle, and having Gideon step up will strengthen the company's long-term leadership stability. The board was skeptical, but Bryn's assistant Portia backed her up. She's been more effective in the past 6 weeks than she was in the 3 years prior. Whatever she's doing in Montana, it's working. They agreed to a 6-month trial period. If the remote arrangement worked, Bryn could make it permanent. When she returned to the ranch, Silas was in the south pasture moving cattle. Bryn rode out to meet him, her horsemanship now confident after weeks of practice. I thought you'd stay in Seattle, Silas said. I made a deal with the board. I can work remotely half the time if Gideon handles daily operations. And the other half? I thought I'd spend it here, learning to ranch properly, maybe investing in your operation as a silent partner, not a manager. And Silas, I want to be with you, not as a vacation or an escape, but as a partner, if you'll have me. You'd give up Seattle? Your life there? I'm not giving up anything. I'm choosing to have both, my work and my life. Seattle and Montana, the city and the ranch. And you, if you're willing. People are going to judge us. Your family, my neighbors, strangers who see an interracial couple with a huge class divide. Let them judge. I spent too much of my life worrying about other people's opinions. I'm done with that. I choose you, Silas. I choose this life we could build together. If you're brave enough to choose it too. Silas dismounted, pulling Bryn into his arms. I've been alone for 15 years, because being alone was easier than risking rejection or judgment. But Bryn, you're worth the risk. You're worth facing down the racism and the gossip and all of it. So is that a yes? That's a hell yes. They kissed, surrounded by cattle and mountains and the vast Montana sky. Two people who'd found each other again after 20 years, ready to face whatever challenges came their way. The first year was challenging. Bryn split her time between Seattle and Montana, learning to balance her CEO responsibilities with ranch life. Silas dealt with increased scrutiny from neighbors and the occasional racist comment from people who thought he was after Bryn's money. Ignore them, advised Thatcher, who'd become one of their strongest supporters. Anyone who actually knows you knows that's garbage. Bryn's mother, Lorraine, eventually came around after meeting Silas and seeing how happy her daughter was. Her father, Fletcher, remained stubbornly opposed, refusing to acknowledge the relationship. He'll come around, or he won't, Bryn told Silas. His racism is his problem, not ours. They faced other challenges too. Bryn struggled with grief that surfaced unexpectedly, with guilt about moving on from Dominic. Silas struggled with believing he deserved happiness, with trusting that Bryn wouldn't eventually leave. Relationships are work, Bryn's therapist Delaney explained during one of their sessions, especially relationships that cross social divides. But the work is worth it if you're with the right person. By their second year together, they'd found their rhythm. Bryn sold her Seattle penthouse and invested in expanding Silas's ranch, adding sustainable infrastructure, hiring additional hands like Boone's nephew Monroe, and implementing regenerative agriculture practices that made the operation more profitable and environmentally responsible. You're doing exactly what I told you not to, Silas teased. Optimizing my ranch, with your permission and input, that's different from taking over. It is. And Bryn, thank you for making this your home, for choosing us over the easier path. There is no us versus easier path. You're not a difficult choice. You're the only choice that makes sense. When Silas proposed 2 years after they reconnected, it was on the same stretch of fence where he'd first seen her SUV coming down his driveway. We are classmates, if you remember, Silas said, echoing her words from that first day. But I want to be more than that. I want to be your partner, your husband, your home. Bryn Holloway, will you marry me? Yes. Absolutely yes. How's this story hitting you so far? Tell us in the comments. If you're loving it, type 1. If not, type 0. We want to know what you think. The wedding was held on the ranch, blending both their worlds. Bryn's business associates mixed with Silas's ranching neighbors, creating an eclectic guest list that reflected their blended life. Thatcher gave a toast. I was skeptical when this city woman showed up at Silas's door, but she proved me wrong. She didn't just visit Montana, she became part of it. She didn't just love Silas, she loved the life he built and helped make it even better. Here's to Bryn and Silas, proof that when you're brave enough to choose love over fear, magic happens. Portia gave her own toast. Bryn taught me that success isn't about working yourself to death. It's about building a life that fulfills you. She found that life here with Silas, and I've never seen her happier, to love and balance. During their first dance, Bryn whispered, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we'd gotten together in high school? We weren't ready then. We needed those 20 years to become who we are. People who could handle the challenges of this relationship. No regrets about the time we lost? No regrets. Because every experience, the Marines, building this ranch, your marriage, your career, it all led us here, to this moment, to this life. I love you, Silas Morgan. I love you too, Bryn Morgan." As they swayed to the music, surrounded by everyone who'd supported their unlikely journey, Bryn thought about that first day she'd arrived at the ranch. She'd been running from grief, from burnout, from a life that no longer fit, and she'd found Silas, a man who'd lived alone for years, building peace in solitude, who'd taken a chance on reconnecting with a classmate from a difficult past. "We are classmates, if you remember," he'd said. And he'd remembered. He'd given her sanctuary, taught her peace, and eventually loved her enough to risk his carefully constructed solitude. Now, 3 years later, they were building something neither could have imagined. A life that honored both their worlds, a love that transcended race and class and all the obstacles society threw at them. "What are you thinking?" Silas asked. "That I'm grateful I got lost and found my way to your ranch." "You weren't lost. You always knew where you were going. You just took the long way around, the scenic route, the necessary route. Because now you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Home." "Home," Silas agreed, pulling her closer. Finally home. And in that moment, with Montana mountains surrounding them and their blended family celebrating around them, Bryn knew it was true. She'd spent years building a billion-dollar company, achieving every conventional measure of success. But this rancher who'd lived alone for years until she'd knocked on his door with the simple words, this was her greatest achievement. Not because Silas needed saving or because she'd rescued him from solitude, but because they'd saved each other. He'd taught her peace, she'd taught him trust. He'd shown her simplicity, she'd shown him possibility. Together, they'd built something more valuable than any company or ranch, a partnership that honored both their pasts, while creating a future neither could have built alone. "We're classmates, if you remember," had been her opening line. But they'd become so much more. Partners, lovers, best friends, home. And that was worth every challenge, every judgment, every obstacle they'd faced and would face. Because some love stories don't start in high school. They start 20 years later, when two people who'd missed their chance the first time finally get brave enough to try again.